Visionary Fancy by Neville Goddard, from The Law and the Promise. A year ago, I took my children to Europe, leaving my furnished apartment in the care of my maid. When we returned a few months later to the United States, I found my maid and all my furniture gone. The apartment superintendent stated that the maid had had my furniture moved by my request. There was nothing I could do at the moment, so I took my children and moved into a hotel. I, of course, reported the incident to the police and also brought in private detectives on the case. Both organizations investigated every moving company and every storage warehouse in New York City, but to no avail. There seemed to be absolutely no trace of my furniture, nor of my maid. Having exhausted all outside sources, I remembered your teaching and decided I would try using my imagination in this matter. So while seated in my hotel room, I closed my eyes and imagined myself in my own apartment, sitting in my favorite chair and surrounded by all of my personal furnishings. I looked across the living room at the piano, on which I kept pictures of my children. I would continue to stare at my piano until the entire room became vividly real to me. I could see my children's pictures and actually feel the upholstery of the chair in which, in my imagination, I sat. The next day, I came out of my bank. I turned to walk in the direction of my vacant apartment instead of towards my hotel. When I reached the corner, I discovered my mistake and was just about to turn around when my attention was drawn to a very familiar pair of ankles. Yes, the ankles belonged to my maid. I walked up to her and took hold of her arm. She was quite frightened, but I assured her all I wanted from her was my furniture. I called a taxi, and she took me to the place in which her friends had stored my furnishings. In one day, my imagination had found what an entire big city police force and private investigators could not find in weeks. R.O. This lady knew of the secret of imagining before she called the police, but imagining, in spite of its importance, was forgotten, owing to attention being fixed on facts. However, what reason failed to find by force, imagining found without effort. Nothing merely goes on, including the sense of loss, without its imaginal support. By imagining that she was seated in her own chair, in her own living room, surrounded by all of her own furnishings, she withdrew the imaginal support that she had given to her sense of loss. And by this imaginal change, she recovered her lost furniture and reestablished her home. Your imagination is the most creative when you imagine things as you desire them to be, building a new experience out of a dream of fancy. To build such a dream of fancy in her imagination, F.G. brought to play all of her senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, and even taste. This is her story. Since childhood, I have dreamed of visiting faraway places. The West Indies particularly fixed my fancy, and I would revel in the feeling of actually being there. Dreams are wonderfully inexpensive, and as an adult, I continued to dream my dreams, for I had no money or time to make them come true. Last year, I was taken to the hospital in need of surgery. I had heard your teaching, and while recuperating, had decided to intensify my favorite daydream while I had time on my hands. I actually wrote to the Alcoa steamship line asking for free travel folders and pored over them hour after hour, choosing the ship and the stateroom and the 7 ports I desired most to see. I would close my eyes and in my imagination would walk up the gangplank of that ship and feel the movement of water as the great liner pushed its way into free ocean. I heard the thud of waves breaking against the sides of the ship, felt the steaming warmth of a tropical sun on my face, and smelled and tasted salt in the air as we all sailed through blue waters. For one solid week, confined to a hospital bed, I lived the free and happy experience of actually being on that ship. Then, the day before my release from the hospital, I tucked the colored folders away and forgot about them. 2 months later, I received a telegram from an advertising agency telling me I had won a contest. I remember having deposited a contest coupon some months before in a neighborhood supermarket, but had completely forgotten the act. I had won first prize, and wonder of wonders, it entitled me to a Caribbean cruise sponsored by the Alcoa Steamship Line. But the wonder didn't stop there. The very stateroom I had imaginally lived in and moved about in while confined to the hospital bed had been assigned to me. And to make an unbelievable story even more unbelievable, I sailed on the one ship I had chosen, which stopped in not one, but all 7 ports I had desired to visit. FG. These are just a few examples of how we can use our imagination to create whatever we want in our lives. These stories are taken from the book The Law and the Promise by Neville Goddard in the chapter called Visionary Fancy. I'll put a link in the description for how you can find this book on Amazon. I love reading these stories and any case studies of how different people manifest things. If you would like to share with me any of your own stories of manifestation and how you have brought things into being, just leave me a comment down below, and I would love to send you a Google form that you can fill out and tell me your story so we can share it with other people. Thanks.